All right. So to begin, Soul, I just have to thank you for reaching out and also putting me onto the office since it kind of wasn't on my radar, but I pretty much
Now it is.
think you did your job, and I watched that within the last 3 days.
Really? All episodes?
Yeah, I just finished maybe like 2 or 3 hours ago.
Oh, amazing. Did you like it? I'm sure you liked it.
I originally wasn't sure about it because I like Miles Tiller, I like Juno
Right.
Temple, but their
Phenomenal.
filmography can be a little iffy sometimes. But
Right. Yeah.
in order to properly know what you do in this show, I had to catch up. Saw you in episode 9. I was like,
Yes.
I know that person.
That's amazing.
And I think since we're talking about the author, let's go back to the beginning real quick, just so that
Yeah.
it's in order.
Yeah.
When I was looking you up, it seems you started your life out in Irvine, California,
Yes.
went out to Boston,
Hmm.
back to California,
Yeah.
spent some time in Mexico,
Yeah.
and then
You
went off
got
to
that right.
LA.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what's the story there? How come your family and you moved around so much?
That's a great question. I feel like I don't usually go into that. You know, when you experience life events, you have to sometimes go back and be like, "Wow, that was part of my history," because you're so used to living in the present moment.
Hmm.
But it was. I mean, so I was born in Irvine, California. Like it wasn't supposed to happen in Irvine, California. I'm pretty sure my parents were going to Disneyland or something like that. They were in the area because of that.
It's a
So,
fun thing to
which
do
is
while
why
you're.
I love Disney princesses. um, yeah, and they were in Irvine, California, and so I was born in Irvine, California, but I actually grew up in Newton, Massachusetts, and I was there for about 10 years, like up until I was like 11, 10, 11, and it definitely shaped who I was. I spent a lot of time going back and forth from Boston to New York.
Hmm.
So that was kind of like the introduction for me into the industry. I started off kind of with um, the child side of the industry, where it's mainly, commercials and print. I didn't really have knowledge of the craft or, what it means to dive into a character. So I'd actually go with my mom to auditions from Boston to New York, and we would go on the train. I think it was like, if I'm not wrong, I think it was like 3 or 4 hours. We'd
That's a long
go,
time.
yeah, and then we'd go back on the same day. So that was my first introduction to, you know, uh, sacrifice, or like long hours, and doing what you have to do to get things done. Um, yeah. So I grew up in Newton, Massachusetts. Uh, I went to this weekend school in Rhode Island where we would take classes and prepare for like on-scene camera work and commercials. So that was kind of how I started. And then I did this talent scout event at the end of the year, and it was so much fun. It was so much fun. It was like in Phoenix, Arizona, and it was in front of thousands and thousands of people, and there was about like 500 agents and casting directors, and I didn't know at the time. I was just like, oh, okay, this is
And
fun.
did
Let's
your
see.
mom find it? Did it come from a school in Rhode Island? How did you learn about it?
Right, right. That was actually connected to the school in Rhode Island. It was like study, study, study for the year. And at the very end of the program, at the very last day, they had this. I'm trying to remember how it connected, but it was basically where they brought some of the students from the school to do this talent scout event, because at the time they were looking for a lot of up and coming young actors. So that's kind of how it happened for me. It's a little bit of a blur because I was really young, but from what I remember, that was kind of the process. And we had to prepare a monologue, and I remember being really nervous, but it was so playful for me. I was like, oh, this is like play pretend. And I did my monologue, and I think I won third place, I believe, like from all the kids. And then CESD scouted me at that event, and they had signed me, and they were in New York.
Mhm.
So that's kind of how I started going on the train to New York and auditioning. And they also are based in Los Angeles. So kind of life just happened, and my family's very adaptable. Like we don't tend to stay in the same place for too long. We like to experience different things, which has shaped my character a lot. And and live in different places. Like we never lived in the same home for too long. It was the only home base I had that was a home that I would go to regularly my whole life was in Mexico. So because that's like a family home, but in the US, we never had like a stable home because we knew that our home, the house was in Mexico, you know? Where was I? Oh yeah, so they were also in Los Angeles. So we kind of decided to make the move out to LA, and I did the crossover and I signed with CESD in Los Angeles, and that's kind of just how I started.
And you just mentioned how being adaptable kind of built your character. So would you say that that's kind of the source of you becoming actor, just having to adapt to these different places and maybe not taking on characters when you move somewhere new, but having to adapt to how the culture is out on the East Coast, West Coast,
Yeah.
maybe when you're in Mexico with your family, of course, having to switch language at the time. Is that kind of like
Yeah.
a block?
Yeah, I mean, in two ways. I feel like as an actor, you can never get comfortable with um, a limited amount of knowledge when it comes, you know, like my personal life can be so different from another character, you know,
Mhm.
like me, my beliefs, the way that I was brought up, you know, uh, sometimes is so different from another character. So I feel like the more you experience, the more it adds on to your creative life because you're able to, you know, imagine and empathize with like certain atmospheres, environments that may be so different from your own. So I think that that's what's amazing about experience and adapting to different things because you can always learn something from the style in which a person lives, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And from what I also read, you have a sister, right?
Yes. Oh, I have, yeah.
So how is it multiple siblings or just that one sister?
Great question. I usually don't really talk about my siblings. We're very close, but we're just like we're very different. We all grew up. We have the same. You know, we were brought up really well. We have the same good qualities, but we just kind of just grew up and went different paths. So I have an older sister, Diamante,
Mhm.
and she's incredible. I feel like I learned so much from her every day and always have because I looked up to her as the younger sister. And then I have two younger brothers. So it's funny because my two younger brothers are Luca and Francesco, and then my
Mhm.
older sister Diamante. All Italian names. Nice Italian names.
And was
And
Diamante the one you used to do like little home movies with?
yes, yeah, I was speaking with her about that the other day because she has even more um like footage from when we were younger, and it was like the first time I ever did a monologue, and I think I was like 7 or 8, but they're on her, I guess they're private on her channel, but we
Mhm.
have tons of, we used to love that. I think that's how we got into loving art. We would just grab the camera and my sister would we would just come up with so many creative different things, and that was, we bonded a lot over that. She actually does music. She's an incredible recording artist. She's always touring. She's like just incredible to watch. And I'm just always in awe when I watch her perform. And she's more like rock alternative kind of style, which is really cool because I love that style of music. And my brother actually did sign with me when we were younger, and we did more print and commercial kind of stuff with CESD. But now he grew up and he's kind of like, oh, I don't like acting. I hate acting. I'm like, I'm the exact opposite. Like, I love it. So that's what I mean about, you know, kind of just growing up and having different interests and stuff.
But that's kind of interesting point how your brother started off with you,
Yeah.
but he kind of went a different direction. What led you to, because you clearly have presence,
Oh,
charisma,
thank
good camera.
you. So sweet.
What led you to do acting instead of becoming a teacher, becoming a politician or something like that, which also can use those type of skills?
Right. I think that's a really good point. I mean, I think that I definitely had to go on this journey in my late teens where I really did experiment a lot, and I was still kind of trying to find my way and self-expression. And I think the reason why I fell in love with acting is because I feel like with acting, there's no limit, there's no boundaries, there's no like walls or boxes that you get placed in. I feel like with acting, you can be all these things and you can put yourself in these people's shoes and understand so much from all ways of life, all different jobs, upbringings. And I think that's so beautiful, because growing up, I felt like I had to choose. I felt like, oh, well, I'm a little bit rebellious in a way, but I'm also very gentle, and I'm very smart, but I also love, expressing myself through art and movement and dance. So I experimented a lot, and it's because I realized that I like to do so many things that I fell in love with acting, because I felt like I had more room and ability to express myself without limiting myself, because it was a journey. Like, I definitely did try this. Wait, no, not that. This, no, not that. So it was definitely that situation.
Now, one of the names that keep coming up when it comes to your upbringing is a gentleman named Antulio Jiménez Pons. I think
Oh,
that's
Antonio, that was actually very good. It's very close.
he literally has a clip on YouTube just saying his name. I'm like, blessings.
Got it.
Soy Antulio Jiménez Pons.
Got it. I'm actually so impressed, because it took me even a while to like nail that name. But it stands out, which fits him very well, in my opinion.
How did you meet him and get involved with him? And also, I kind of wonder, since you've been kind of in the industry for a while, have you ever worked with him in any type of way, like in Mexico or?
I love that you asked that. I really love that you asked that, because it was more of like the sentimental part of my uh, beginning into this career, and the process of an introduction to. So when I had lived in Mexico for a few years, the industry in Mexico is very different from the industry here. It's like the friend of a friend is in film and is a director, and we were childhood friends. Like, it's so, I can't explain it. It's very,
Who you know?
yeah, but it's very based off of like, people root for you because they love who you are as a person, and you know it's very relationship based, and I love that. So Antulio Jiménez Pons was my first mentor ever, and he's the first person who introduced me to what the art of acting really was. And it connects back to the reason why, I started with my brother, and acting the way we were when we were younger, kind of, it's easy to outgrow that if you don't have an appreciation for the craft. And that for me was like the first mind-blowing experience for me, because I was like, wow, this isn't just about getting in front of the camera, and it's not just about you. It's so much bigger than yourself, and it's so much more, and it's about humanity and even psychology, and understanding like why a person is the way that they are. And I started to fall in love with it, because I started to understand myself more, which is also why I was like, okay, this is what I want to do, But he just kind of was hard on me, and I love that, because he really, pushed me, and he believed in me. And I feel like in that time in my life, I needed that, because I didn't understand the importance or the stakes of what it means to be an artist, the sacrifices that you have to make on a more intense level. Mm-hmm. So I lived in Mexico, and he was like, okay, I'm going to coach you every day. Well, before I get into that, I wanted to say, so Antulio Jiménez Pons is a very respected director from the golden era in Mexico. So he worked with like just the best artists in his time, like the 50s, that kind of style.
Mm-hmm.
And
you coming upon his 100th birthday, right?
Yeah. Beautiful. And he's so lucid, which is so incredible. And I've always naturally connected with older people for some reason. Like, I guess I could say I'm an old soul, I could say that, but no, really, like, he worked with Maria Felix, like iconic actresses from the 50s, like the golden era in Hollywood. And I really wanted to understand the roots of acting with him, and the origin, and understand it on a more complex level. And I feel like I found that here in LA now, but in the moment I felt a little bit lost with it. I didn't know how to go deeper with my art. So he really pushed me. He was like, okay, we're gonna work every day, you're gonna memorize this and that, we're gonna film it, we're gonna go on camera. He helped me analyze 5 different characters, all very contrasting. And he told me, okay, but the trick is, here's the here's the tricky thing. You have to do it without speaking a word of English. So I hadn't been completely fluent in Spanish at the time. I was like, I could understand everything because I grew up with my mom speaking in Spanish. But it's different to be able to look at scripts and scripts and scripts in Spanish. So I was like, oh boy, like it was a year of my life where I just kind of cut off everything and I just threw myself into this. So it was the best training because now that I look at the training that I'm getting now, it connects back to that. And he was the first person who helped me understand, you know, breaking down characters, understanding how to feel that for yourself, how to get to certain places. I had a little bit of an emotional block when I first started. I didn't know how to tap into my own power. I really believe that vulnerability is strength, and I had problems with facing that. And now I like own it. You know, I'm always, you know, using that to my advantage. But he was also such an he is such an incredible person. He just holds such a special place in my heart because he really was the first person who kind of took me under his wing, and he gave me a lot of confidence in myself, I feel.
Now you mentioned an emotional block. Now I know
Yes.
thus far you said you're very rebellious, very autistic. Do you think with the way he was developing you, he kind of removed the blockages in terms of people that are in your family, you understanding them more, or just when it came to the art, you more so understanding yourself and then how to adapt to different people and situations?
That's such a great question. I mean, I think that for me, I started to realize this later on through exploration in my art, but I realized that once I started to deepen myself as an artist, I started to also change as a person, and my relationships with others changed, you know, and that's why I also the main reason why I fell in love with acting, because I started to open up new doors and realize like oh, like this, you know, this person that I'm this character, I have a little bit of that in me. And you start to see that and you start to understand yourself like, oh, I know what this what it's like to be in these shoes, you know. So you experience things through story, and then that helps build your character because, you know, through every story there's always a human lesson. There's always a lesson that everyone who's watching in the theater leaves the theater feeling differently because they were able to understand the lesson through the artist who was trying to voice it, you know.
Mhm.
So I feel like as I started to understand that, my relationships changed because I felt more connected with myself, more grounded with what I knew about myself, what I believed in, and just more authentic. I feel like there's because I feel like in art there's no space to hold back. There's actually there's a saying or something that I've seen recently where um, a lot of artists will say like you can protect your heart in your everyday life, you know,
Mhm.
but in your art you cannot protect anything. It's kind of like you have to be this vessel. You have to let everything just kind of move through you. And because I was allowing myself to do that through acting, I kind of gave myself permission to be more understanding and empathetic with my own self and my own life and my own history, and have more clarity with that.
That kind of makes me think, like, you're aware of Euphoria and everything, right? The
But
show?
yes, I love that show. I'm a big fan of that show.
So with that in mind, we have to open up your heart and everything. How, like, say for a character like Rue, if you was to play something like that, how do you separate the feelings you and the empathy you need for the character and what they go through from your own personal life so it doesn't get kind of mixed up and toxic?
That is such a you have such great questions, like so much depth. I feel like I'm in this is so enjoyable to be able to talk about these things. So they're not like everyday conversations, you know.
Mhm.
I feel like so this is kind of like actor talk. So I'm going to try to not make it actor talk, but there's ways of acting where you use your own personal experiences, and that's how I started, and that's
Mhm.
how I kind of started to understand my own emotions, which was good. But where I really started to grow was with imagination, where you completely clear the slate and you empathize with someone who has a completely different upbringing and life than you, and it becomes exciting because that's how you learn, you know. It's so much more exciting to play like playing all these different worlds that you wouldn't experience in your everyday life. And that's what helps you grow, because if you're always acting from your own personal experience and you're very limited, you know, you're only connecting to what's comfortable, or you're only connecting to what you already know. Whereas these stories of other people, they need to be told, you know, so you need to force yourself to step into these shoes. And by stepping into these shoes, you kind of, how do I simplify this so I don't go like super into like actor talk, but it's kind of like, you, like, for me, it's always interesting and challenging to step in the shoes of someone who's a lot more complex and has a lot more issues than me, because you empathize with them, and then you understand, like, oh my God, like, I understand why this person is the way that they are now. So I feel like you kind of have to take their baggage, that character's baggage, and you have to live from it and say yes to that character. And a lot of the times it's maybe not literal, but a lot of the depth to every story sometimes exists in every person. Like, there's a part of us that has a quality like Rue, you know, whether it's, you know, we all maybe have addiction, we all maybe deal with abandonment, we all maybe deal with you know, feeling like an outcast to a certain degree, all in different ways. Like, we all have experienced that in our life, but not literally in that form, you know. So I think that when it comes to like dealing with the literal, I think that comes down to like creating that with your imagination and visualizing that, but understanding that the root of the story, the core of the story is what matters, is what's going to move people, you know.
So with that in mind, we have gone really over the theory of how you got this far, but now when it comes to the offer, what was the casting process like?
Oh my gosh, it was like this, kind of, you know, because, you know, it was during the pandemic, and when I had auditioned, it was an interesting time to have an audition, because in my mind I was like, okay, we're close to, I think it was December at the time when I got the audition, and I was like, everyone's on vacation, everyone's in a holiday break, you know. I had my guard down, which I think was the best thing in a way. Like, I always try to look back and see like what happened there that was different. And I think that the fact that it was December, the industry was kind of going down. I'd done like 60, 70 tapes at that time. So I was just like, okay, well,
For this one role?
oh, no. In general, for the whole year. Like, yeah, they had me up for that one scene. They had me, no, no, I would have done it, but no. No, it just, like, I like to kind of keep track of how much work I'm doing. And it, at the end of the year, it had been like 60 or 70 tapes. So I kind of, at that point of the year, I kind of like tied the ribbon. I was ready to go with my family in Mexico for the break. And I received the email, the audition from my rep, and I instantly had a feeling. I was like, oh, it was unique. You know, a lot of what I feel like I tend to go out for isn't something that's as personal and connected to my roots. You know, my family grew up loving The Godfather. Like, it was such a huge part of me growing up. I used to watch so many old films, and The Godfather was like one of those movies that just stuck with me so much. So I looked at it and I was like, ooh, like, I'm just gonna send him a tape. I sent him the tape. Didn't hear anything for, I believe, like over the date that they said that they'd already have someone cast. So I didn't hear anything. It was the day after New Year's that I got the call, and I remember my dad being really emotional and tearing up. And you know, it was my first debut. You know, it was small, but I think it's important as an artist to think about like the meaning behind every little thing you do, and it's not necessarily always about like the achievement, but what that achievement symbolizes and what it means. So I feel like it was just very emotional to do that. So it was a very good, it was amazing. It was the best feeling. Like, you know, I was in shock, but I was really happy. I was really happy.
So what was
Sorry, I don't speak much Italian, and you just broke my translator. Do you speak any English?
Yes, I think so. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Come ti chiami?
Simonetta.
So what was the process when you got on set? Was it just like costume, makeup, throw you right into the scene? Or did you speak with Juno Temple a little bit before you worked with her? How did the day go?
It was first off, I'm going to say Juno Temple is such an incredible woman. I'll get into that, but I'll start with how the whole process was like. So I had spent time on Paramount Studios for another project that hasn't released yet. And I remember feeling like really sad. Like I just really wanted to just be back on the lot because there's something about walking on that lot that you're just like, just in awe of everything. So I was really happy to go back. I had my fitting at Paramount, and I initially thought that I was going to have the shoot day at Paramount Studios, and then my location was, I don't remember where it was. It was like, I believe Lancaster, somewhere around there. And I showed up and it was really cold. I was like kind of disoriented because it was like my first time being on a set that big. I just looked around and I was like, oh wow, this is happening. Like there's I've done like indie films, which is my heart and soul. I love indie films, but it was just a new experience for me because I've never been on something like that. So I showed up and they put me in my trailer and I had time to just ground myself because obviously I was very nervous.
Mhm.
It was like a mixture though of nervousness, but also like just excitement and taking every little moment in. And I think that that's what changes the experience when you show up with just this desire to make something happen and not just to do it and make sure it turns out good, but just to take in the full experience and enjoy everyone there. And I was waiting outside and the guy who plays Al Pacino, Anthony Ippolito,
Mhm.
he became a very good friend of mine after the shoot because he was so welcoming and just so fun to be around. And I think that, you know, we're both Italian. And I think that after just hanging out with him for a while before having the shoot, really made me realize that a lot of these stories it's like a collaboration and it's a special experience. So I feel like with us hanging out and just joking around, um, like my shoes were falling apart. It was fun because it was not perfect, you know. And I think that that's what makes um, there's fun moments, there's intense moments, there's like moments of just euphoria. You know, there's like so many, there's so many moments of like, oh my god. But he definitely, I'm always gonna be so grateful to him, and you know, I feel like we're gonna always be friends because he was able to see that it was my first day and he understood what that was like, and he just made the experience so lovely. We took a photo together and everything, and it was like Michael and Apollonia, and he understood what it was like to be part of a project that was also important for him in his childhood, being Italian. So we kind of had that bond. So yeah, he was a lot of fun while I was waiting. And then they're like, okay, you know, we're ready for you. They took me up. I don't know where I was going, by the way, because they kind of just surprise you. So
Mhm.
I was walking up and I see this like huge box light, like the size of half of this house that I'm in. Like it was just huge. I was just like, okay. And then I looked to my left and I had someone also helping me because my shoes were breaking, but it was all funny. And I walked up and they had rebuilt I don't want to get this wrong. They rebuilt the Vitelli cafe from the movie, or the cafe from the Vitellis.
Mhm.
And I was so blown away because they rebuilt the whole thing. And I was like, I felt like I was in Italy. I was like, this is it just everything felt more real, you know, with the outfit, with the setting. And those are things that you don't really get taught as an actor, you know, because we're used to just being behind a white wall and doing self tapes. But when you're actually in the environment and in the setting, it really helps bring it to life. You know, you feel it in your body and what you're looking at. And I remember I felt really grounded because once I'd stepped in, there were so many little details that just like screamed Italy. So I just focused a lot on the details, and it like set me in place, and it felt so like, okay, I'm Simonetta right now. This is the 70s. It was kind of like a spiritual experience because for a moment, I really didn't feel like I was me, which I think is the goal. Like you want to just be able to step away from yourself and be this person. And then Juno introduced herself to me, and she was just this ray of sunshine. She was so sweet. And I will forever say from today that she was just the best co-star ever. She would compliment me. You know, we would work off of each other. We'd improvise, and she'd always tell me like, wow, that felt so great. And to get that from someone else, from someone that you grew up watching on film and television, was like, it also kind of gives you that comfort and that confidence. And I want to be that person for someone, because I feel like that to me was more special than a lot of the other things, like just being able to, you know, love what you do and work with people that you love and have them support you. So I feel like that to me was just so beautiful to have someone be so kind and supportive and uplifting. So she was amazing. When I initially did the scene, I did it more in my interpretation of the character, and it was really, really nice because Adam Arkin also was an incredible director. He was so kind, so fun to work with. We also had the best time filming. He really was really great to work with because he'd give me direction, and he would tell me, you know what, let's throw that up, like let's try something completely different. Let's try it from a place of like innocence, because when I came in I was more like, okay, yeah, like she's a Simonetta is a thunderbolt, like they say in the script. So I had this idea, and it was so amazing to just be in the present moment and work off of the other people in the room and the energy. And I remember it felt so magnetic because there's things that came up that weren't planned. Like there was this moment where I'm doing the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and I felt so in that world that I felt like I'd almost felt so much joy that I started to giggle, and Juno started to giggle, and we were just like laughing at each other. And the director Adam was like, you know, I love that. Let's just keep that. Let's make it positive and like just beautiful in a sense where it was so pure for her. It was a story of her being in a village. They cast this in Italy, so they didn't have these big casting offices. They literally went to the village and saw whoever came in, and it was because she was so pure that the casting director was like, that's what the story needs. Like, it needs soul, it needs heart, you know. So I thought that was really amazing that a lot of unexpected things came up from that. I thought that was great. Yeah.
And how would you compare being directed by Antulio let's think of it, right?
You got this.
How being directed by him and the theory that he taught you compared to being on a set and work with somebody who seems to be a little bit more collaborative when it comes to the approach? How was that change?
That's a great question. I feel like all your questions are so great. Every time. That is a great question. Wow. No, it really is. Because it gets you to really think and understand. I feel like Antulio wanted me to just understand, and that helped me because I definitely had no understanding at the time. But I think that once I kind of had an idea of okay, this is how you can use your emotions, or you can use your movements to express yourself. I think after Antulio, I kind of started to go on my own journey as an artist and be more self-sufficient, where I was kind of taking a little bit from every method, but really creating a way where it comes down to making sure it's true. Like anything that's honest and true is what matters. Like I don't like the style of acting that I like is never analytical, because if you're in your head, you don't allow yourself to improvise or let things be in the moment, like me and Juno did. You know, if you're so in your head and analytical, you're blocking your instincts and you're trying to please and do something right, like a math problem, instead of allowing humanity to just like spill out and what's human and what is relatable and honest and true. So I think with Adam, he kind of saw that I'd already had, there was something in me that was really wanting to be playful with it. And Juno too, like we wanted to do that. And because we had that energy with each other, he kind of encouraged that, you know? So I feel like it comes down to, you know, also as an artist, like trusting your own intuition and trusting your gut and your instincts. And because it depends on the director, but sometimes a lot of directors love that, you know, and sometimes it is also about finding the in-between where you have to respect the director and what they want, but you don't have to completely strip away like what you feel for the character. So sometimes it's like bringing your work that you've done at home and finding that in between with the director. And sometimes the director is like, I love what you're doing, like keep doing what you're doing, please, you know. Sometimes, you know, so that's why it is always a collaboration. And it's really important to have a good relationship with, you know, the person you're having the conversation with in the scene or the director, because again, like some of the best work ever has been because of that, you know, taking what the director takes from you. Also, you know, as a director, seeing what the actor is already doing and improvising with, and seeing that and thinking, oh, I didn't think about that. Like maybe we can use that. So it's this beautiful collaboration, I feel like. So it's important to yeah, just to respect the director, like how their vision, and also share like what you feel in your heart and soul in the moment, you know.
So for a lot of The Offer, one of the main issues is trying to figure out a way to present The Godfather, especially toward Italian Americans, without it seeming like a negative stereotype.
Mhm.
And within media, we still kind of have those issues. And from one of the first things that you said when you introduced yourself, you're an Italian Mexican person.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes me wonder, when it comes to media, in terms of not just roles you've seen or been offered, do you feel like perceptions have gotten better, where it's not just kind of limited when it comes to Italian Americans in the gangster mob area, or Mexicans when it comes to the thug thing? Is it kind of becoming more diverse for actresses like you?
That's great. I think that there are a lot of things that are changing. I feel like, for example, in The Offer, it has touches a lot on the facts that, you know, there was the mafia in these stories. But I think that now when we're telling these stories, we're talking about like so much more. And I think that The Offer, it touches on, you know, actual facts, but it really gets to your soul and your heart by telling you like what these people were feeling when they were making the stakes that they were feeling, not just because of the mafia, but you know, they had so much pressure on them. It was like this like one-time opportunity to make the greatest movie ever, and every second it was almost slipping out of their hands. And I feel like what's nice now, I feel like in comparison to back then, is that we're telling more of like the human story. We're not just focusing on, you know, on the fact that yes, the mafia was there. We're focusing on like what else I feel like is at the heart of a lot of Italians. Like in The Offer, they talked about like cooking pasta, you know, together, like what it means to bring family together. And a big thing about Italians and Mexicans is that family is so important. And I think that was the best parts of Italians, I think, was highlighted in The Offer. And I think that that's so important because I don't feel like I always felt that watching people portray Italians, because it can get stereotypical. And I feel like for a lot of the Mexican roles now, I think it's amazing because from the projects that I see that are coming up, you know, they're not coming to mind right now, but I'm always staying up to date with what's being released so I can stay inspired myself and keep my eyes open to, you know, where the world is moving through art. And I see that now, you know, the typical, before, a lot of the roles that were going to for example, Mexican women were like the role of a maid or the role of a housekeeper. And through the years, like now it's so beautiful to see Hispanics playing roles other than that, because they're not just that, like they're also, they can be like, they don't need to be in a box, you know what I mean? Just because of the fact that, and a lot of the time it's because of the stereotypical, the way that, you know, film and television viewed Mexico for a while. And I think a lot of Mexican filmmakers have, you know, stepped up and put themselves on a pedestal to say, you know, this is who we are, like this is what we are. And that's funny, that's the episode that's called It's Who We Are. I feel like also Italian culture and Mexican culture are so similar. They're so similar. They have a lot of the same values. So I think it's beautiful to see that. I do think we're going in the right direction. I do think we're going in the right direction because, you know, I feel like where we're going with storytelling, it's the right thing to do to give everyone a voice and give everyone the opportunity to say, this is who we are, not how you see us, you know? So I think that's beautiful.
All right, so let's move on from The Offer because that's slowly becoming your past.
Yes.
And your future is now with At Last Dessert and also Let's Meet Halfway.
Yes.
Now, from what it seems, both of them are part of Dana. How do you pronounce her last name?
Dveris.
Both of them are Dana Dveris projects.
Yes.
And so, how did you get introduced to her? Is that kind of like your family network thing, or what's the story on that?
So it's pretty amazing because I actually, film and television get released in such different ways, because with TV it's a lot faster, whereas with film I have so much respect for film, especially independent films, because there's so much more time that gets put into not just releasing it, but, you know, especially as independent filmmakers, you have to think about, you know, film festivals, where you're going to pitch it, so many different strategic things. So I actually met Dana before I shot The Offer. So we instantly became friends. You know, it was, I think, off of like one of the casting sites. And I'm the type of person who will read a story. For me, it's always about the story. It's always about the script. That's what will draw me to a film or to a story, you know? And I had read a little bit of the breakdown and I was like, I love the story. I personally love complex female characters where there's so many different layers and levels to this person that, you know, it's very psychological. So for me, I love just trying to understand these people. And it's that story where, you know, you learn something about yourself, but even the person watching learns something too. You know, I love stories about self-development and growth, where you're completely different in the beginning of the story, and then towards the end of the journey in the story, you just change because of life, because of events, because, you know, life forces you to, and in the events of this person's life as a character. So that experience made me love independent film even more. And then I did At Last Deserted, and we just kind of built this beautiful relationship where we both are such big fans of each other. Like, I can't even say, she has been my #1 supporter, and I am just constantly praising her for how talented she is. And I think that, again, that's the type of relationship that really makes the magic come out when you're working, you know? So yeah, I'm really excited for that. That should be coming out, I believe, beginning next year. I believe, hopefully.
So something that I'm kind of finding as a pattern here, it seems like when it came to your relationship with Dana, that was something you found on your own, right?
Yes.
So what role does an agency play, just to kind of get that behind the scenes stuff? What role does the agency play if you're finding you're finding certain stuff for yourself? What's the relationship?
I feel like I've always kind of been the person to see that as it's important to be an artist, but it's so important to also understand the business side of things. And you have to understand that sometimes a lot of like you can have the best team and you have to be grateful because they are, they're rooting for you, they're helping you. But you as an artist sometimes are the only person who knows like where you want to go. Like it's important to visualize and say like, okay, this is the route that I want to go. And sometimes it's not the fastest way, but it's the more rewarding way. And I've realized that I listen to myself and I see that, I love independent films. I love TV too, and I love like the bigger stuff, but I feel like personally I want to begin my career, my journey, and kind of shape a path for myself. And sometimes you're the only person who can do that for yourself because you have that vision and um you have that what's it called? You have
Drive?
that drive and that dream for yourself that I feel like you can't even put into words sometimes. So I feel like it's important to never get comfortable and like while you're auditioning, while you're waiting for these things, to not just kind of like sit down and wait for things to fall in your lap. I feel like it's so important to go out there and just really look, because you never know. Like some of the best things that I've done have been because I wasn't scared, and I met incredible people because I reached out, I put myself out there. That's what art is. I think it's community. I think it's so important to surround yourself with the right people and meet people, because you never know, like leaping into the unknown, like you don't know what treasures are waiting there for you. So I really believe that to put yourself out there, like even if you're not in the beginning getting paid for it, like just do it. If you're getting this, don't let anyone tell you like what the right way is to do something. Sometimes you have to listen to yourself and be like, no, like this is my way, this is how I want to do it. So I kind of listen to that, and I've learned to just go with my gut. Yeah.
Well, with that said, I think Let's Meet Halfway was an Indiegogo project.
Yes.
And from what I saw on backstage, I think the range for payments like $500 to $1,000. So
Yeah.
how comfortable, since you like to do indie movies, how comfortable are you with the idea of, yes, it's very fulfilling, but it may not pay the bills? Or in the case of it being an Indiegogo project, you can make the investment in it, like you'll sign on, but you know that unless a certain amount of people get on board, it's not
Right.
going to happen. How do you deal with the anxiety of all that?
Right. And that's the thing of like working with up and coming, really talented people, is that, they're also up and coming just like you. And you don't know who they'll be in the future, but in that moment in time, like they're doing what they need to do in order to create the best outcome, the best project. And when I see that, that is very attractive to me, because I see that they're willing to put in a lot of the work as much as I am for the project to come out. Because at the end of the day, I would rather do a lower budget project and have it be so moving, artistic, than just get a paycheck and not being proud of my work. So what I learned about my mentors now is that you need to find that balance where you should be able to take on maybe not so much pay, but you're doing something that's so fulfilling, that's literally screaming to the world, like, especially because you need to put yourself out there. This is who I am as an artist. This is how I am in my art. And you need to balance that with, exposure, which is like the bigger paying stuff. And you find that balance, because you can get stuck in either one, and either one, in my opinion, isn't good. Because if you're stuck in, the indie films, well, you don't really have a voice, or you don't have the spotlight on you as much as you should. And you don't really get to showcase your work on a higher platform.
Mm-hmm.
But if you only fall into just doing like things that are commercial and, about the money, the blockbusters that, in my opinion, sometimes I've watched indie films that are a lot more moving for me than the projects with like a lot of money that, which I think is kind of why the world is kind of changing a little bit now, because before it was like, okay, you do the big blockbusters and that's the only times that you would see art. And now because of these film festivals and all these really talented up and coming creatives, you know, I think that they're getting a lot more of a voice now, which is great. And now there's streaming and there's ability to get, you know, your work out there more visibly. So I really think that both are really important. I think everything in the industry, I think, comes down to balance and just also finding your lane as an actor, because it also depends what kind of actor you want to be. Like there's so many different routes you can take, and I think you have to be very specific on which way you want to go, because you know you can make it your goal and just do, you know, the high pay stuff, and that's fulfilling. And then there's people who find more fulfillment, you know, doing the independent films, and they feel like they grow more that way. So I think it also or people who do sitcoms, like it definitely depends on like what just the person, you know. And I think it's good to respect what everyone wants to do, but also be very specific with where you want to go as an actor and why you did that project and why you wanted to do that film, you know.
So with that in mind, Antulio has been your mentor. Dana, you have seen firsthand direct, produce everything. So as an artist, does that make you want to see your career down the line go into directing, producing, writing your own stuff?
Ooh.
Or do you want to like stick to acting and that's your real love?
You know, I've thought about that. I've thought about that. I think that because I'm like very, very fresh and new, I feel like it's crazy because I've been in the industry for a long time, but I feel like I'm just now starting in a way. I feel like I'm just, it takes time to really know yourself and know where you want to go, who you want to be. And I feel like because I have that now, it's completely just taken the wheel and swerved the car for me. So I feel like now I'm in a place where I'm just now starting to come into myself and be an actress and an artist. But as I grow, you know, I get these thoughts. I'm like, wow, because before I used to be like not really into the behind the scenes of producing, directing, but I think after being on set and seeing how beautiful it is to work with all these people and share these ideas and see the process of it, I've realized that I in the future could definitely potentially like that, because I love the experience of being on a set and I love the experience of sharing ideas and being with other people. Like I love the idea of community when you're on the set, and it's not just about you, and it's about sharing ideas and doing something together. So I definitely in the future, I feel like once I feel a little bit more grounded with I feel grounded now, but I feel like it would be the next step up, you know, because I feel like of course there's people who just go into producing and directing, but I feel like I want to make sure that I'm in a place where I feel like I'm ready to do that. But that's a good question, because it wasn't until recently where I didn't consider that maybe something that I would like. But there's so many stories that need to be told that aren't told. So yeah.
And before I move to the next question, to the next
Yes.
range of questions, I could not find any information about Alas Deserted. I saw, I think on one of your YouTube pages, there's like one of your acting reels, which has pieces of it, but
Yes.
as for an actual synopsis, I can't find anything. So what is that one about?
Right. That's good. Well, that's actually kind of going back to, I probably should have mentioned this, but when I was talking about how when you're doing independent films, it's a lot. It's like the process of releasing a film is a little bit more complicated because you need to wait for festival season to submit.
Mhm.
So I haven't been able to like release I'm so excited to, but I haven't been able to release the full project because I want to be very respectful and careful with how much I show, because you can shoot a film 2 years back, which I believe I filmed Let's Meet Halfway almost a little over a year ago. And that's kind of that situation. It's on the way, but not out yet, because the idea is to get it, you know, into the film festivals and everything.
Right. which leads to the question of social media.
Yes.
Your social media is kind of all over the place. And I was just trying to think, because I think you have a Facebook page, which shows you might have been a musician at one time.
Yes.
And then your YouTube page has a bunch of self-tapes that have no sound in it. And there's like 2
Yes.
acting reels.
Yes.
What is your relationship with social media? And do you want to be kind of like the modern actor where you have a lot of people having access to you, or you're trying to do it more like old school where you have access to me when I want you to?
I love that you're asking this question, because I think, I always kind of have to explain it for, people, because they'll be like, oh, they'll see my work as an actress, but then they want to know, like, what's the story? Like, what's going on? And I'll have to kind of get into it. But I kind of grew up doing music. It's one of the things, like I spoke about before, that I experimented with, but it kind of wasn't, it was like a very small portion of my life, which was a form of expression, but it just wasn't enough for me. I felt like I gravitated more towards acting because, I felt like I could just do more and say more. So it was kind of like, and I feel like what's beautiful about art is that, it's one of my dreams one day to be able to do a film with like a musical, so I feel like I love music. I think it's definitely still a part of me, but I don't think that it defines me, which I definitely want to make that clear, with other professionals, that I love music. I will sing if I have to, and enjoy it, because I love musicals and I love all forms of art. And it's a part of me, but for me, the only way I feel like I'd ever go into music in that way again is if it were to be a musical or something connected to a story. I think story is so important. And then as for like, trying to go back to what you're saying, as for social media, so I, again, like, experimented a lot of things growing up, especially in LA. It's like really hard to stay grounded and to kind of know how to go your own way, because a lot of the times people are going to tell you, oh, you need to do this, like you should be doing that, you need to and then it came to a point for me where I did the whole social media thing. Like, trust me, I did that. I experienced it. I realized that I didn't really like it, and I felt like it was a distraction for me from my art. So there are people who know me more from like the social media aspect, but I thought it was important, and I needed to, in respect to myself as an actress, I needed to separate myself from that and really focus on the work and what really matters. And I want to present myself as that. Like, I want the world to know me as an artist, and not, if anything, I feel like I don't want to be presenting myself as just an image with no story, no background, no depth. I feel like that's a trap, and I feel like I did fall into that trap for a little bit. And it's hard. Like, social media is hard for a lot of young women, for young men, like everyone, even adults. I think it's hard, and it was hard for me to step away from something that I was really involved with. But I would have never started my journey as an artist or as an actress if I hadn't stepped away from kind of what I knew. And I feel like sometimes in order to grow, you need to surrender to certain things and listen to yourself, and not just do things because it's what's commercial, or it's like, I would hate for someone to give me a role just because of my social media. That's I wouldn't like that, but there's some people that would.
Because
So again,
you have a certain amount of followers, that means that they can actually show up.
Yeah, that's not what I feel like I believe in too as an actress. I feel like as artists, we also have responsibility for the future generations, and I don't feel like, I wouldn't want that if in the future, if I saw a young girl starting in the acting industry and she felt like she needed to expose herself in that way, and because she had to, I wouldn't want that for her. So I feel like it's important to set examples and give people a choice. I've had comments, all of the actors that I love, not on social media, but I have had people tell me, this is what you need to do. And on the contrary, since I've left social media, I've been doing better in my career. So it's like, sometimes you just need to set examples, even when it's hard, even when people are, not respecting it, and when they're judging it, I think it's important to set examples, because I definitely had someone to set an example for me. And I think that the future generations need to see people doing things not necessarily the commercial way, and doing things the way that they want to do. So it was also a way for me to prove things to myself, but also to set an example for others. I think that that's the main reason why I did, because I feel like it's also, there's in-betweens. Like sometimes it's good to, I've definitely gone back and forth. Like it's good sometimes to go back, but it's okay to take a break. It's okay to just like be in the present world and see what comes to you in that time of being off social media. Sometimes you learn something, which I did. Like I got off of social media and then I went back and I was like, I don't feel like I need it. There was a point where I needed it. I feel like I needed to have social media for a reason. And once you see the toxic side of it, you're able to see that, it's okay. It's okay. You're not the only one. Like there's other people who don't necessarily like it. And it doesn't mean that you need to be against it. Like I'm personally, who knows, maybe in 5 to 10 years, I'm in a place where I'm like, you know what? I feel like I've learned enough. I'm going to go back to social media and use what I learned to use it in a positive way, But for now, I feel like I'm more in touch with myself not being on it. And I feel like people should have the option to see if they want to do it or if they feel like they have to do it,
One last question before we get to the final 5.
Yes.
We talked about doing print. You've done commercials, TV, shorts, movies. What about live theater?
I feel like you're reading my mind. I feel like you're reading my mind. This is so great. I actually went to, I believe 2 days ago to watch Grease at Musical Theater West in Long Beach. And it was the first musical theater production that I had seen literally since the start of the pandemic. So I would definitely got to tears many times during the night because I forgot what it was like to see something live. And it gave me an appreciation because now everything is streaming, you sit on the chair on the couch and you watch things but it's just different when you're in person. It's so different, to see the theater and everyone there. And it was just beautiful. The more I've gotten into my art and self-expression, the more I've realized that there's this yearning and curiosity for wanting to do theater. And again, musical theater, which is again connects back to music. I'm actually trying to explore it now. I'm in the process where I feel like I had my first experience with TV. I've done the short films. I feel like the next thing that I really want to explore is theater, because there's something it's kind of like a dying art, and it's like this old worldly kind of art that is so important for every artist to know. Like Shakespeare, like there's so much that you learn from the origin of art that will just only make your storytelling stronger. So it's actually it's perfect that you asked that, because literally it's pretty much the next thing I think for me that I want to look into, because I feel like a lot of people think that sometimes it's like you have to do this or that, but no, you can do both, because they both really do complement each other.
Which I know I was saying we're going to go to the final 5 after this, but I had a question.
No, yeah, please ask me the
With
question.
there being live theater, streaming, movies, shorts, how do you see them all as equal level playing fields? Because of course, shorts, that's how you cut your teeth and you really start build up a resume. TV shows like The Offer allow you to be seen, as well as movies. But there's still this sort of weird prestige about one over the other. Do you see them all as the same playing field, or do you feel like you mentioned many times how shorts are kind of not shorts, but indie pictures are like your love affair. So I'm just trying to figure out, how do you see each one beyond not just being an artist, but also being seen? Because of course, like you said, that's a balance. So which art form or medium, I should say, is the one that's kind of like you want to be kind of your go-to when it's not a money issue?
I think my go-to is just like very raw, authentic, stripped down style of cinematography and film. It to me is everything. Um, yeah, that's like my main. And then I feel like there are people who will, look down on others because they do either they book a lot of TV or they're in a lot of films and they have no idea or sense of what theater is and what it means. And I think that you have to humble yourself as an artist and not judge, because even me, I had no idea or, like I do now, of what theater is. And since I've started to educate myself on that, I'm like, wow, I wish I knew a lot of things before. But I think overall, it's not good to judge because, there's still all forms of art, and just because someone's expressing themselves in a different way, there's people who feel so much more alive on a stage than they do in front of a camera. And that's normal because you have to be living in this world with this like just thing in your face, but then there's people who prefer the the environment of a set, because they can imagine that for themselves. It's just, I feel like it's whatever you love. As an artist, it's whatever you love, but it's because you love what you do that you should be able to respect and understand why someone else loves what they do.
So let's get to the final 5 questions.
All right.
First, who or what inspires you to continue your path?
Who or what inspires me to continue my path? So who I would say, aside from my inspirations like Joaquin Phoenix and Jessica Chastain, aside from them, I think it's myself, because, sometimes I look at like maybe like a more wounded version of myself or like a younger version of myself, and I see that, she would be proud. There's times where I knock myself down and I kick at myself, but I think it's important to do things to honor yourself and for yourself, because there's like that little kid version of you who would be proud of like the things that you're doing now. And so I think for myself, I try to do it because I feel like there's no level of like, not necessarily superficially to where you can go, but again, like emotionally, internally, spiritually, through your art, there's no level to where you can go. So I feel like what also inspires me, besides like just like for that reason, is the idea that you can continuously keep learning and growing. So I think that idea of self-growth through work and through stories is what inspires me to keep going, because I'm like, every time I tell a story, I'm like, wow, I don't know if I'll feel this way ever again when I tell a story. And then a new story will come and I'm like, oh my, I think the same thing. So it's always this like never ending process of just loving art. And the more I grow, the more I love stories that I might have not loved before, so it's this self-growth. I think what's kept me going, especially in the hard world of this industry, is to make it about the story and make it about like storytelling and what really makes, like as kids do when they play pretend, like the idea of being able to tell these beautiful stories, to me, is what keeps me going. I think if I were to get too involved into I guess like the pressures that the industry will put on you, which it happens, it's inevitable, I feel like I wouldn't have the childlike soul and dreamlike mentality, because I feel like you need to have that, no matter what. You have to keep that. And even if there's people who try to suck it out of you and they try to like make you feel less for thinking that way, you need to always love what you do and never stop dreaming. And also find the beauty in every situation. Like I try to focus on, like there's this book that I read called Letters to a Young Poet, which is like one of the many books I read, but it talks about awakening that I must, which is like you ask yourself like, okay, why are you doing this? And if your reasons are for superficial reasons, you're not going to find that drive because you don't have your heart and soul into it. But if you're really doing something because you love it and you like wake up every morning and you're like, it feels good and you love what you do, then, you know, you're going to have a lot more, you know, energy to just keep going at it. And things are so much more lighter and fun. And like, why would you want to do things in a way that hurt your art? Because if you allow that energy to hit you, it's going to feel like it's just like heavy all the time. And I feel like focus on what matters, you know, focus on the art, focus on what makes you happy, focus on what you want to say, and also maybe even focus on like what you could do for somebody else, you know.
The passion just, I have to process for a second. So would you say at this point, do you feel like in your field you have started to really gain ground and get comfortable? I mean, thus far, pretty much it seems that way, but every now and then you kind of mention there's little pockets here and there that you're still learning and kind of trying to understand the vibe of.
Oh man, I feel like I proudly always acknowledge that I am very flawed and imperfect and I make so many mistakes, but I think that it's so important to just keep fighting. You know, like that's what life is always going to present you with challenges. And even in story, there's always a challenge. And you need to, even if you fall, like this is going to sound cheesy, you fall down, you get back up, you know, but it's not, it's never that simple. Like it's hard. It's hard when you're going after what you love, you know, you're going to be challenged. But I think it's, the people who have had the toughest journeys and the people who have been challenged the most have always had like just the most beautiful outcome from that because they kept fighting, you know, and because they, you know, I think it's easy to mess up and not acknowledge that you messed up. And that's something that I've like really started to work with. Like, it's okay to make mistakes, but you, as a, you know, as a professional or even as a person, but it's important to acknowledge it and see it in order to understand. I think everything is about understanding what the lesson was from the challenge, you know? So even when I do get knocked down, you know, in this industry, I try to learn, like, how can I use this as a strength? How can I use this and learn something and use it as like a tool so that I can be stronger? And yeah, I think it's just important to, you know, understand that in life, you're going to constantly be growing and dealing with struggle, but to not look at struggle as like a negative thing, but look at it as like a opportunity to learn something or become better or understand yourself more.
Even though this is all from the final 5 questions, I just feel like I have to follow up. When it comes to your journey, has it been mostly through just experiences, the people you meet? Did you go to therapy? Is it books? What got you to this point?
Great question. This is the best one because I love doing this. I love sharing this. I'm actually part of the studio, which has literally been life-changing. I think it highlights what I was already doing on my own, but once I got more guidance, it gave me so much clarity as an artist. And it, like, I don't want to be dramatic here, but they definitely saved me from, I feel like, falling down a path that I subconsciously did not want to go down, you know, and I feel like I was doing that. And I feel like this studio helped me find who I actually, and I can't say who I really am, because again, we're constantly looking for that, but it helped me really understand where I want to go and how I want to do that and what I want to say and what really matters. It's this studio called The Imagined Life. Mm-hmm. The Imagined Life. And it's Diana Castle and Steve Taysort, and I work with them, and they're this lovely couple, and they have taken my artistry to just like a whole other level, and I'm endlessly grateful to them because it was just, I think one of the biggest gifts is, you know, what I love about that studio is they change your mindset from being, I guess, superficial or analytical, and they help you look at the things that really matter. and that helps you as an artist, because as an artist, you can't be selfish. You can't think of yourself. You know, to be a great, great artist, you have to always make the character more important than you. You have to make the story more important, because if you're thinking about yourself, you know, you're not going to be able to really authentically tell and voice what needs to be told in the story. You know, it has to be more important that, and you can really see when artists do that. So they really taught me that, and they gave me so much knowledge and a reading list of so many books, and it's just changed my perspective. I used to see the world in a way, and now I see it so differently. I actually would love to say the names of the books, but a few of them are Letters to a Young Poet, Courage to Create, Mystic in the Theater, Eleonora Duse, and then Awakening the Heroes Within by Carol S. Pearson. Yes, that's it. And they're just books that I look at daily. Like I have to pick them up, because there's always something that you can read again and you absorb it, and you can never read it enough times, because you go back to it and it reminds you something, and you see either life or the character differently, because it opens up this, it awakens a poet in you. You know, you start to see things from the perspective of an artist and a poet, instead of like from whatever happened to you that day, you know. So it's been incredible. They are amazing.
Would you say, like, when it came to your family, when it came to what you've learned from Antonio in Mexico, compared to what you found with this acting, I would say, is it a theater group kind of thing?
It's technically a performing arts school, but well, obviously during the pandemic, you know, we do playwrights, so it technically is. It's technically theater, but it's a lot. It works for television too, because it's very grounded in your body. It's not so much. I mean, I can't say that much because I'm very new to the you know, getting into theater, but it is a performing arts theater school. But it's very grounded. We do playwrights, but it's more about analyzing the character and understanding what the story is trying to tell you, which can be really hard, which helps once you get you get an audition for a movie or a TV show, and you need to be able to understand what the writer is trying to say, what the writer dictates, you know, what lessons and what meanings they're trying to say. So that's what the school teaches you, because a lot of the stories, they build off each other. A lot of the time that they have stories in common, and you'll recognize them, which I didn't do before. You'll see like, oh, okay, well, I get it. This character's like, you know, is dealing with this. Their beliefs are being challenged. It's the innocent, or it's the victim, or sometimes it's the opposite. It's a warrior. It's someone who's out there to, you know, it's kill or be killed. So, yeah.
So would you say, what the communities you came from before, it was inherited, but when it came to this one, it's kind of one that you found yourself in comparison?
I mean, honestly, it's like they're like a hidden gem. I wish I would have found them before. They were talking about how now because of the world, they're starting to do more, you know, PR and marketing and advertising because they're not even technique, their philosophy is so beautiful that the world needs to see it. And I try to always, like, any person I meet, I try to tell them, like, you need to see this, look into this. You know, I'm always trying to share if I'm on set, this is who I study with, but they are like a hidden gem. It was off of, I think, a friend of mine. You know, we were talking about acting studios, and I had previously studied with Ivana Chubbuck, and it's the exact opposite. So for me, it was like a huge shock, because I was like, wait, what? This is the exact opposite. And once I did the intro workshop, I remember Diana just like, because I was able to reach a level of emotion that I never did before. It wasn't me squeezing anything out. It was genuine. And it was a story that had nothing to do with my life. So once I experienced that, it was this epiphany, mind-blowing thing, which a lot of people say when they join her studio. They all say it's just mind-blowing, because it wasn't about faking. It's not about trying to look or please. It's generally just living this what this person's going through. And yeah, I tried the class, and then I never left. I never went back. I'm like, this was everything. I loved acting even more when I found them.
So with what you said in mind, what is one thing, if someone was to follow your path, you would say they have to do and something they should avoid?
That's great. What you have to do is, again, trust yourself. Don't let anyone tell you who you are or what your future might be like. Only you can know that. What you shouldn't do is, also what you should do is trust yourself, and don't try to be like somebody else, because you're gonna, disrupt all the magic that you already have within yourself. You're gonna, close yourself off to the gifts that you have within yourself if you're trying to. Because I've fallen into that. Like, I know a lot of people who fall into that. There's a lot of pressure to fit a certain standard, but once you stop trying to do that, you lead yourself to finding what kind of artist, or what really makes you happy. And then what you shouldn't do is, I think, you shouldn't get too personal or allow other people's fears or their insecurities to get to you. I think that, again, like, only what your calling is, in your heart and soul. And I think that we're always presented with a challenge. I know for some people it's family members, like for some people it's like it's been people in their past, and it's hard to shake that off. But I think that, again, you just have to keep fighting and say, like, no, this is who I am. This is what I want to be. And, whoever wants to jump on board, great. If not, the journey goes on.
And final question is, in the long run, what do you want your legacy to be?
That is so great. I mean, I think that's the question that that is a big question. I think that's one of the things that I feel like I can't answer right now, just because I want to be able to answer it when it's genuine and real. And once I'm there, I feel like I'm still in again, like, I feel like I've learned so much, but there's still so much I need to learn. I definitely know what I can say for that is that I definitely want my legacy to be of something of truth and being a part of something so much bigger than myself. Like, that's what I know. I know that I'm looking for, and maybe it's gonna connect to. Not maybe. It's definitely gonna connect towards something in my art, but I want everything in my art to be genuine and to always be about something more than myself. And I think that anything that just brings the world together in such a beautiful way, I genuinely just want to continue telling stories, and just being a part of something so much greater and bigger, and hopefully having that come across the camera on a bigger platform in the future. Yeah.
Well, I have accidentally kept you for an hour and a half.
Yes. It went by so fast, by the way. Like, it went by, did not feel like an hour and a half. That felt like 40 minutes.
That's a good thing. So
Yeah.
I gotta thank you, because I know you said you only had an hour before, but
This is what matters. I love being in the present moment. And I feel like if we would have rushed this, it's important to see, like, all the great stuff that comes out from just, like, being in the present moment. And this was, like, so incredibly lovely. Of course it's gonna get blurry right now, but I hope that I hope, like, whoever, like, watches this, I really hope that it can, guide them and help them in ways where, when I first kind of learned about these little things, it really helped me. And I think it's important to, have artists to look up to, even if it's from, like, the beginning, because you get to see the process. And sometimes you don't see, the good and the bad through social media. Sometimes it's so comforting to see, what the reality is of a journey and the mindset that it takes to be persistent and keep going.
And that perhaps is what your legacy is this far. You've shown how much community matters in order to get this far. How you
Yes.
have to advocate for yourself, whether you use social media, whether it's just through talking to people one-on-one.
Right. Yeah.
And every opportunity is an opportunity not just to build a network and just kind of have a, what is it called, a relationship. You use somebody, but
Yeah.
actually build a relationship where when it comes to Dana, Antulio, anybody you've met, yes, you can go to them for business advice, for anything dealing with your career, but you could also just go to them for a conversation where you need to either learn about different experience, kind of defrag in a way the experience you just went through in terms of an acting experience. So just in general in life, you come from an Italian-Mexican family. It's a thing about culture that you said that I want to try to remember. That it's not just about family, it's about making sure that everybody who knows somebody, they have access to them.
Yes.
This person is an actor. They can help you in the terms of the speech you have for school. Or if it's something bigger, like this person's a cook, you know that you're going to be on this film set for this amount of time and you need to dedicate all this time to it. They can easily come over, help you, and get you to the goal that you want to get to.
Exactly. And I genuinely believe that you need to be a beautiful person in order to be a beautiful artist, because, you know, you need to be able to say yes to everything and pour your heart and soul into everything. You know, there's no room for limiting yourself. And yeah, you summed it up so much better than I did. You like
listening, don't get it twisted.
I love that you are. You completely got it like spot on. And also like how adding all these qualities to the experiences just make it so much beautiful. And I feel like a lot of people forget that. So, you know, when you focus on the right things, you know, just magic happens.
Well, I'm going to let you go, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you, and it was so lovely talking to you and you know, getting to know you too. You know, you're so receiving, and I appreciate that so much. You know, you're a lovely person.
I mean,